what I want to do is see if I can't raise a series of questions, and I do want to see if you are a person out there who claims to subscribe to a philosophy, something like scientific naturalism, or if you're going to claim that all reality is reducible to the material world, however that's going to be defined. I would like to see if we can't engage a discussion, open a discussion, and get at some issues. Okay, for me, and these are some of the concerns that I've tried to raise in various videos, is it's that the problem is that relations are as real as things. See, now I think we start with this. Well, what do we even mean by a thing? So, a person says scientific materialism. Okay, what do you mean by materialism? What is the material? Now, I guess someone could give a sophisticated argument and say, well, really, there's only energy. And what we call matter is a kind of state or a phase that energy can assume at certain velocities or from certain perspectives. And if that's the argument, if the argument is that all of reality is basically ongoing energy patterns, I guess I'm sympathetic and I really don't know what to say. It seems though like people posit something like that energy is convertible into various material forms. And I'm going to see if I can't first come at this issue of the reality of relations through physical kinds of relations, and then show how that precipitates much more profound problems when we move to the relations of how the observer and the observed are related, or how the human being as an experiencer opens to, quotes, a world. And even there, opens is such a loaded word. I mean, it makes it seem like there is a world there waiting to be discovered by a consciousness, something, I guess, like that. Okay, um, and please, if you are again a scientific materialist, help me understand this. I would like to get a handle on this. Okay, so I think the first way that I would come at it is say, okay, so again, relations are as real as the things. That's my first postulate. The second argument is that, or sub argument of that, is that there are different kinds of relations. And so when we want to get at the kinds of relations that are real, we need to get at different kinds of relations. And just for argument's sake, for clarity's sake, I'm going to try to get at molecular bonding relations and the way that matter can undergo state changes. Let's just take water. Okay, so we have a chemical bond between hydrogen and oxygen, and this bond is subject to various kinds of relation states according to temperature and atmospheric pressure. And these two things then change its state from solid, liquid to gas. Now, take solid. Water is a um, fairly fascinating liquid. Even though it's so pervasive on the planet, it is actually quite rare in that it is larger as it moves from liquid to solid. It actually gets a little bit bigger. Now, normally things, they shrink when they cool down to a solid state, but water, I guess because of the unique kinds of bonds between the molecules, they become, they go to right angles at one another, and because of this, there actually is a kind of expansion. Now, the physical dimensionality of those molecular bonds, okay, so the question of the angle of connection there, I guess I think, some people are going to want to say yes, these are properties that water will assume. It is a kind of energy, but we call it energy that's concretized into various forms of what we would recognize as matter, especially when we talk about the fact that it does seem to have different states. Now, if we're going to say that it has different states, and we're going to say solid, liquid, gas, that kind of introduces something like, well, it all can't just be energy. Okay, so we're starting to get into some of the problem here. Now, if we're all just energy, well then why do we have different states of energy where different properties seem to come into play? Okay, now if I go to some of these properties, I think we're ready to state that the size that's occupied by the mass of the material it expands when it goes from liquid to solid, largely due to the particular kind of right angle bonding properties at the chemical or molecular level. But the properties that can be experienced, properties like hardness or wetness or humidity, those don't seem to be there independent of us. That is, those are a different order of relations. Now, they're not just relations between elements in the world and a certain sense of elemental relations that then take on sorts of properties, but once you start to introduce the human observer or any kind of conscious mind which would reckon with those kinds of relation states, it seems like something else is going on. Again, it doesn't seem like wetness is a property of water. It has to do with a property of the interaction with water with other things, and in particular with a conscious awareness of that. Now, we could try to go to feelings as registers of relations. I think it's going to get too nebulous. My guess is lots of people have been largely informed or trained in a kind of subjective orientation toward emotions. My guess is that most people are going to argue that emotions are something like hormonal and or physiological relation states in the body. I think that they're probably not that well informed. I think a lot of people would need to read on, there's great bodies of work in phenomenology. It's Husserl, it's certainly Jean-Paul Sartre, Merleau-Ponty. There are other scholars, Hans Jonas, where you're going to say that emotions themselves are a kind of register of the current relation states that you're in. It's not that your feelings are some sort of internal representation of your outward situations or realities. If anything, those are a kind of pre-thematic, non-consciously explicit register of those relation states. Okay, so see if we can get to maybe some more direct examples here. So I tried to say before, again, that relations are as real as the things. And we tried to begin with this problem of relation states in the physical world, but then how those get consciously known about and dealt with. I want to maybe end with this example here of the problems of relation states like distance and all of the predicates related to spatiotemporal embodiment. So issues like in front of, behind, to the left, to the right, these seem to be in the world and they're objective. They're not subjective, and I think the way that we're going to say feelings are. See, feelings, we're going to go, well, it's that you feel that way, another person feels another way, and we're going to make it seem like it's subjective. Okay, and I understand that. It would take too many videos to haggle about that. But let's take here, I have a hairband and some post-it notes. Now, if I go like this, we can see that from the viewer's side, the post-it notes are in front of the hairband, and now the hairband is in front of the notes. And I can sort of change how I'm doing. I can do it with my hands. I can do it a lot of different ways. But the properties of in front of or behind or to the left or to the right. Now, for me, as I'm looking at this, for me, the post-it notes are on the left. But as you're looking at this, I mean the viewer of this video, the post-it notes are actually on the right. Now, that's an objective property that can be described. But if we start to ask, how are these related to one another independent of any observer? Could any one be in front of or behind the other, to the left or to the right of the other, with no observer? See, it doesn't even make any sense, right? I mean, there's a sense in which observation itself creates certain relations. Your brain state may be a complex set of relations that's representing this, but to say that it's there and then your brain is simply a map of what's there, it really misses it, because those relations aren't there independent of people. Your brain is both releasing and accomplishing relations that are real, like near and far and to the left and to the right and in front of and behind and adjacent and under and above, all kinds of relations. Those are not made up. Those are, they're properties of the world, but they're not there of the world independent of people. So I guess I'm at the end of my series of questions. I want to know, to those people who want to claim that reality can be best understood through a kind of scientific materialism, what are you going to do with the problem of relations? Are relations material? Now, if we're going to go back to this, let's go to this example. I think it's clear you're going to be able to argue that there could be things like neuronal states and various sequences of firing patterns and things like that, and you're going to maybe try to reduce those relations that are observable to representational relations in the brain. I don't think that that's going to work, though. I think there are many kinds of realities in the world that are humanly constructed but real relations. I mean, they could be things simply like an hour or a foot or a mile. Is we construct objects that are kinds of relation states and then use them for measuring purposes. That is, most of the basic measuring units in science are human fictions, and yet they're able to deal with realities because relations are real. But I don't think relations are material. So I'd like to hear some response to that. Thank you.